pretty heavy.
Okay, welcome back to the Don Bullock Chevrolet Cadillac Morning Show. I have a new co-host, Lisa Farrington.
It's not
new,
Thursday.
Not new, but she does Thursdays, and so she's doing Wednesday today. Thank her for that. And we have with us Congressman Bob Etheridge. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Honored to be with you. Thank you for letting me come and join you.
How long have you been in Congress?
I have been in Congress now since '97, so this is my 14th year after having served 8 years as state superintendent of schools, which for North Carolina, which I really enjoyed, and 10 years as a state legislator, and 4 as a county commissioner. During that same period, I was owned and operated a small business for 19 years.
And you have a farm.
Business.
You have a farm, don't
we
you?
We do. Faye and I have a bit of property where we have a few cows, and my son actually does the farming. He truly, we kid each other, you know, all the rest of us in the service business, and he really makes and sells products that provide food and fiber for this country.
And you're a veteran.
I am.
We're in
I
the
spent
military.
2 years in the United States Army, really after I got out of college. And I tell folks that I may have gotten a 4-year degree, but I really got a master's degree in sociology when I served in the Army. The people you meet, the opportunities you have, you meet really, I was there at the end of the draft when everybody participated in military service, as did many of our World War II and Korean veterans. I was in during Vietnam, and it's amazing the people you meet, the things you understand. You just think you know people till you get put in with folks from all over the country with different ideas and different thoughts.
And you serve
on a
on
great experience.
You serve on the Veterans Committee. Tell us some of the committees you serve on,
Well,
Congressman.
when I first went to Washington, I served on the Ag Committee and stayed on that committee for 10 years, 12 years. I served on the Science Committee because that's important to us in this state with a lot of research and development. And then when 9/11 happened, the Speaker and the Minority Leader put together what's called a Select Committee on Homeland Security that later became a full Committee on Homeland Security. And I served on that until I went on Ways and Means this past year. So I've been on Ways and Means for 2 years. And that is considered one of the more important, some say powerful, I say important, committees in the U.S. House. We have not had a Democratic member serving on the Ways and Means Committee from North Carolina since 1953.
Really?
And that individual was chairman of the committee, a fellow by the name of Bob Dalton from up in Allegheny County. And he was on the committee for 30-some years and meant a lot to North Carolina during those years. As a matter of fact, he was chairman of the committee and introduced the legislation in the Ways and Means Committee that created the Social Security Act in this country.
Wow.
So North Carolina has a pretty rich history in that regard. Some say that's how the Blue Ridge Parkway wound up on the eastern side of the Appalachian Mountains rather than the west. When he talked with President Roosevelt about how important it was to have that road on the eastern side of the Appalachian, as he was working to introduce the legislation for him on Social Security, they tended to work it out, I guess.
Congressman, why did this Congress go home without passing a budget?
Well, what you're really talking about is the budget was a part of the appropriations bill.
Right.
And the Senate really couldn't get the votes to get it out. We could have gotten it through the House. And so what we wound up doing was an extension of the budget. And the unfortunate thing is that's happened many years under Democrat and Republican control. We will do it when we go back after the election next week.
So this wasn't intentional to wait till after the election?
Oh, no. That's happened on a number of occasions. I think we ought to do it, and I think we ought to pass every bill on a standalone bill. But, you know, it's helpful if both sides tend to want to work together. And this time we didn't have people willing to work together, and that creates
Well, you voted no against the death tax. You're against...
No, that is not true. No, that is not true. They've been putting that out, and that is not true. What I did was I voted for a $3.5 million exclusion for each individual, for $7 million for a couple, and a 45% rate with a stepped-up basis. I did not vote to do away with it. The reason was...
Like we've had this year?
Well, what you have this year is what folks think what they have. Because you actually have a capital gains tax that is worse for individuals. It is great if you're somebody like George Steinbrenner's family, because they benefited from it. But for the average person whose income, whose estate, let's say, is $1 million or $2 million, they pay more because the capital gains tax starts from $1. And so they thought they were getting a break, and so in effect, you're better off, and you can talk to any accountant on this, you're better off with $3.5 million per person,
Individual.
which would be 7 for a couple. And the stepped up basis means that if, let's say, your parents were to pass away and they had an estate, let's say it's worth $7 million, an example, last year, not this year, last year, you would have inherited the $7 million estate, no taxes whatsoever, and the very day after you got through settling that estate, you could have sold it for $7 million, put that money in your pocket and paid 0 taxes. That's what stepped up basis is. But on the capital gains scenario this year, there are no federal inheritance tax, but you pay capital gains, and let's assume your parents bought that land for, let's say, $50 an acre. And let's say it's now appraised at $5,000 an acre. Let's say 5, make it easier. And let's say it was an estate of $7 million. You would pay capital gains tax, subtract 50 per acre from whatever it was, so you may be paying capital gains tax on $6 million. And that's a whole lot more than you would have ever paid under a inheritance tax. And that's why the inheritance tax is so important to have it, and that's where the stepped up basis, you can talk to any accountant or anyone who wants to deal with an estate, you want that stepped up basis. That is critical, because that establishes a new baseline for the people who inherit that property and move it forward.
All right, I got another question.
Okay.
You voted no on requiring photo ID in federal elections. This is and photo ID on our show is a big deal. We think that when you go to vote that you should have to prove who you are to vote, because I've said before, when I've gone to vote, the person behind the counter has no clue who I am, and they're just going on my word.
Well, you have to show your ID at the bank.
You have to show your ID most anywhere. If you're using a credit card, you have to show your ID. So even if you don't have a license, I feel that you have an ID to prove. An adult has an ID to prove who they are. And I feel like someone that might not have an ID, probably voting is not on their top priority. If they don't have an ID, probably voting is not a big issue to them. So tell me why, because that hits home with us. Tell me why.
Well, I think it
Explain
depends. You got a lot of people in this country who were born at home. Let me go back to that point, because I think it's important. There are also those who want to show a birth certificate. There are a lot of people on the birth certificate they have in rural. I grew up in rural North Carolina. I was born in Johnston County. I was born at home. And there are a lot of people, you say, well, gosh, I thought everybody was born in the hospital.
Right.
For young folks, that makes sense. But
you have a license.
well, let me finish. I also have a birth certificate. But there are some folks who didn't do that, and it was recorded in the Bible for a lot of older folks.
Right.
And they may never have gotten a driver's license. Hard to believe, but that's still true in America. Should we discriminate against them and say, if you don't have one, you can't vote? No.
But to cash a check, they've got to have a license to prove who they are.
But you've got people in this country who don't even have checking accounts.
Well, but they get a
easy.
payroll check. They get a payroll check. And
Well, I don't know that they do.
well, they've got to have some sort of income.
There's some people, they do, but see, it's easy to be perfect with everyone. There are people who have to prove their Social Security by having documents like that to get a Social Security check, and they don't have enough money to have a checking account. They do nothing but carry cash in this country. Should they be discriminated against and say they can't vote, and they were born in America?
Well,
No. I mean, we
Right.
don't disagree on that.
right.
But,
Well, I just
but
don't think
there
that,
may come a time as you get older and you move forward. But there are a lot of folks who in Eastern North Carolina, in this congressional district, who really don't have those
I guess
IDs.
it's hard
And
to
it's hard to
believe
remember,
that
but it's
people
true.
go through life with absolutely no ID.
But that happens.
great day.
You've got people that watch, I guarantee you, listen to this program who may not have an ID.
May not have a photo ID.
That's exactly right.
That's very hard
That's
for
hard
me
to believe today.
In 2010.
But
Yeah,
it really is
2010.
true. Now, I think that as time goes on, there'll be fewer and fewer and fewer. And I think that's true. But there are those. And there's some people who never served. If you served in the military, you're going to have an ID.
Right.
But there we're thinking by and large of men. Today, that's less likely. You have more women that are serving in the military. But there are a lot of older people in their 70s and 80s who may not have any semblance of an ID. That's
that-
hard to believe.
That is.
That's hard to believe, but it's true.
All
It
right.
is absolutely true.
I have a question about this. PACs. People hear about PACs. A lot of people out there don't understand what PACs are. And PACs are political action committees.
Right.
They're groups that are formed to raise money for an individual candidate.
Or not only candidates, they can actually form and raise money for issues.
Right.
You know, if it's
Right.
a school board
That's
issue,
right.
for a school
Right.
bond, or whatever, yes.